I get asked all the time by amateur players, what's the difference? Why are these guys that good? What's the difference between them and me? I've been really fortunate in my teaching career to work with a lot of top-level professional and college players. Well, I'm going to tell you in this video what I've learned, and it's broken down into really three categories. It's full swing, it's wedges, and it's putting, and I think you'll learn a lot. What I see the most often that amateurs do, that you rarely see a professional do, is take the club back inside. You rarely see a tour player on the takeaway that gets the head of the club behind them on the backswing. So you will almost always see a tour player's takeaway look like this, and most amateurs' takeaway looks like that. It's probably the number one thing that I see that amateurs do that professionals and top-level amateur players don't do. Is they'll take it back correctly, and the amateurs always take it back on the inside. So that's one of the first things that I think that most of you need to learn, is how to take the club back correctly. And I've said it many times, but whenever the shaft of the club is parallel to the ground, it should be parallel to your target line. And if you're parallel to the ground, but not parallel to the target line, and the club's back in here somewhere, that's already strike one against you. And you rarely see a professional player take it back too far inside anymore. If you go back 40, 50 years ago, you saw it a lot, but you rarely see it anymore. If anything, you'll see a professional player take the club back on the outside, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But learning to take the club back at the very beginning is really the main difference between you and a tour player. The other thing that I see that professionals do much better, that amateurs do it poorly, is professional players give themselves lots of room on their backswing with their arms, and they don't let their arms get across their body. They keep their arms out in front of their shoulders on their backswing, and so they create a lot of width and a lot of room, and this actually allows them then to drop the club and swing from the inside. And all you guys that are trying to keep from coming over the top, which is this motion, well, the main reason you have to swing over the top is because your arms go across your chest and they're in here like this, and there's no room to go under. There's no room to drop your hands. There's no room to create any lag. And so the only place I can go from here is out away from me. And that's what you do. So if you've tried to fix your coming over the top by swinging more to the inside, you're just compounding the problem. So you'll never see a tour player get their arms across their chest like this on the backswing. They've got their arms out in front of them, and when they're back here at the top of their backswing, their arms are out here in front of their chest. Gives them lots of room here between their elbows and their body. So then on the downswing, these arms can work this way. And it's very important to understand that as a player. And the more room you'll give yourself on the backswing, the better player you'll become, I promise. The other thing that I see with a tour player and a highly competitive amateur player is that they have very good pre-shot routines. And they do the same routine every time. And it limits that little voice in their head that is talking to them and giving them 5 or 6 or 7 swing thoughts at the same time. If you can have a pre-shot routine that occupies your time to where you're really only thinking about your target, that's going to be very important. The final thing, full swing, that I see, the difference between a tour player and an amateur, is the ball is not their target. It only gets in the way of their swing. They're very focused on their target downrange, down hole, whether it's the fairway, whether it's a certain part of the green. They're very focused on their target. They're not focused on hitting the ball. They're trying to make a swing that hits their ball to their target. And if you'll be disciplined enough to work on that, it's an acquired skill, but if you're disciplined enough to work on that, it'll really help. The other thing about professional players is that they have predictable ball flight. Almost all the shots they hit, they know the direction the ball's going to curve before they hit a shot. Typically, it's their stock shot. I think TV commentators do all of us an injustice by saying how much these players try to work the ball one way or the other depending on the hole location or how the hole is laid out. Most professional players have a stock shot. It may be a little fade, it may be a little draw, but regardless of where the hole location is, and regardless of whether it's a dogleg right or a dogleg left hole, they are hitting their stock shot because that's what they can trust. Find a predictable ball flight that you can trust and your scores will plummet. The other area that I see that is a huge difference between a professional player and an amateur, and even a competitive amateur, is how good they are with their wedges. And it's important that you have high quality wedges, and it's important that you have the bottom of the wedge or the grind of the wedge that matches your swing characteristics. If you tend to have a very steep swing, you need wedges with more bounce. And if you have flatter swings, then you need wedges with less bounce. And so the tour players are very particular about the sole and the grind that they have on their wedges. If you need help with that, just see your PGA professional and he can help you with that. The other thing that I would tell you is that most professionals have at least 3 wedges in their bag and usually have 4. And so it's important for distance control on full swings with them. They hit the ball so far that they're very close to the hole a lot more often than a lot of us, but they have a lot of wedges in their bag and it gives them a lot of flexibility on gaps between clubs on their full swings. It will help you too. Finally, what they're really good at with wedges is controlling their distance. They learn to hit a high shot at various yardages. I've talked about this before in other videos, but they're very good and they play by yardages. They know if their landing spot is 10 yards, they know how to hit a 10-yard shot. They know how to hit a 15-yard shot. They know how to hit a 20-yard shot. If you're not practicing the distances and learning to control the club head speed of the wedge, to control your distances, you're missing the boat. And I highly recommend practicing to yardages and to get good at least 3 yardages. Get good at 10 yards, get good at 30 yards, get good at 50 yards. The tour players get good at 5-yard increments, but if you can just get good at 10, 30, 50, it'll greatly reduce your scores. You'll have a lot more putts for pars. And so practice with your wedges, practice a lot. Pretty much a tour player will spend 2 hours with their wedges for every 1 hour that they practice full swing on the driving range. The more you practice with your wedges, the more your scores will come down and the more you'll play like a professional player. The other thing that I see with the main difference between professional players and amateurs when it comes to wedges is professional players try to hit wedge shots low. They try to launch it at a 30-degree launch angle or less, and they try to hit their driver high. And amateur players do the exact opposite. They try to hit driver low because they think they want it to roll, and they think it'll go farther that way, and they're wrong. And then they try to hit their wedges high because they think they have a lot of loft, and that's what it's supposed to do. So if you learn to hit your wedges low with a lot of spin and your driver high, you'll play much more like a tour player. The other thing I'll say about wedges, and it's probably the subject for a much more in-depth video, but tour players generate a lot of backspin with their wedges, usually in the neighborhood of 10,000 or 12,000 RPMs. And they accomplish this by having forward lean with the shaft at impact. And that is what compresses the ball and creates spin. Most amateur players throw the club head away and they don't have forward shaft lean at impact. And all that's happening is the club is sliding under the ball with too much loft. And so they have a very difficult time controlling their distance. You control distance with the wedges by having forward shaft lean, a consistent loft angle at impact on the club, and by generating backspin. The final category really where there's a big difference between professional players and amateur players is with this club right here, the putter. The biggest difference between a professional player and an amateur player is a tour player rarely three putts. It's really that simple. They rarely three putt. Their distance control is so good. They practice distance control by looking at the hole, by doing ladder drills, and various other speed control drills, but they focus most of their practice on distance control with their putter, and they're very good at it. They're very good at reading greens. They're very good at setting up in a correct putting posture where their forearms and their shoulders are parallel to their target line. And because they set up very well, they have a stroke that's very repeatable, and it allows them to control their distance so good you can't believe it. And so that's what you should focus on as an amateur player, is distance control with putting. The putting statistics prove the point. From around 3 feet away, the tour player will make 99 out of 100. So if you can't do that as an amateur, then you need to practice 3-foot putts until you can hit it straight enough to make 9 out of 10 or more of your putts from that close range. By the time they get to 8 feet, the average on tour is only 50% from 8 feet away. There's a few players that are much better than that might be in the 60 or 70% range, but the average tour player only makes 50% from 8 feet. So you cannot expect to make a lot more than that as an amateur player. And even at 8 feet, the most important thing about an 8-foot putt is hitting it the correct distance. If it goes in, it goes in, but we can't miss the next one. And I see too many of the amateur players that I get to play with that'll have an 8-foot putt for their first birdie of the day, and their buddies tell them, don't leave it short, it's a birdie putt. And they'll hit it 5 feet by, and they'll miss that one, come back, and they'll make a bogey. And you just can't afford to do that if you want to shoot good scores. Distance control, once you get to 8 feet and longer, is the most important skill in putting. And you cannot practice distance control drills enough. The way players learn to make these 3-footers and 6-footers and putts that they have a much better chance of making is they use a mirror a lot so they can see their shoulder and forearm alignment and their eye alignment. They use a string where they putt on a straight putt and they can see their target line and they can learn to aim correctly. And they use the putting arc so they can develop a repeatable, correct path with the putter. And if we can control the face and we can control the path, we should be able to hit pretty straight putts. And then if we can learn to control our distance, we're going to be a competitive putter. And that's the key to you. It doesn't take great athletic ability to be a great putter. So if that's a weakness in your game, practice your distance control, and I promise you, you'll get better.